Hey guys, I want to compare and do a review on the 26 YZ450 versus the 23 to 25 model years. Before we jump in, I'm just going to say up front in the video, I will not be buying a 26 YZ450, and there's a few reasons for that, which we'll get into in a minute. First, I want to say, and I'm not knocking them, I feel like it needs to be said, most of the moto or all of the motocross media outlets are based in Southern California. They ride the same tracks. They get free bikes every year from the manufacturers, and the conditions are a lot different than the rest of the country for the most part. Their dirt is mostly intermediate to hard packed, and I really get bummed out when manufacturers only listen to them and then they change the bikes. And for some of us other folks, we don't necessarily like that. And I'll give you an example in a moment, but before we do that, let's talk about the 26 YZ450 changes specifically to what I think makes a difference. First, they changed the airbox. They added a resonant inductor. The throttle body air intake shape changed. There's a new head intake port shape, steeper port wall angle in the cylinder, intake cam timing change from 110 to 107 degrees, added a heavier flywheel. They went to a 51 tooth rear sprocket. They added a hydro clutch, added a head pipe resonator, and the new muffler is extremely choked up. Now, I'm not going to get into the frame or the chassis or the suspension stuff because most of my issue is with the engine and that stuff in the bike. So, if you recall, the 23 to 25 YZ450 was an awesome bike. One of the things that I loved about it was the engine. The engine was very free flowing, and that would mean that the bike would rev quick, it would spool up. It didn't feel like a heavy, lethargic 450. Additionally, that would translate into the corners, and just having a lighter feeling bike doesn't fatigue you as much. So that was one thing. The second thing was because the engine was had a lot more torque and a little bit more power,
To
it
the
would allow you
25
to carry third
YZ450.
gear,
I know
and it
there's
was one
been
of the
quite a
few
few
450s left that
write-ups
you could
from the
carry
major
third gear
media
in
mags.
most corners. Not all, but most. And that came, I believe, stock with a 48 or 49 tooth rear sprocket. Now, what had happened between the 25 and the 26? Well, the media outlets in Southern Cal, and again, I'm not knocking them, but their conditions and terrain is different. They thought the YZ450 hit really hard, and if you just use the stock maps that they give you, it does hit hard. Off the bottom, it's too aggressive. However, they made a GYTR power tuner for that very reason. Unfortunately, most people, not all, but most people are too lazy to actually go in and change the maps and build a map that suits them. With that tuner, that bike had the most versatility of any bike out there because you could tame down the low end, the mid, the top end, whatever you wanted to make it mellow for you. Most guys didn't do that. What they did was they took the two maps, they may have tried those, and they may have downloaded someone else's, like a Kiefer, couple of Kiefer's maps or whatever, which were fine, but that doesn't mean that that was the right map for you. So, what did they do on the new bike and why is it not so good? All of those changes that I listed have made the bike down approximately 3 horsepower. And yes, horsepower isn't everything, torque is what gets you there faster. But because of that and all of the changes, it now to me feels like a KTM Husky slash Kawasaki 450. It's 3 horsepower down. You cannot carry third gear in the corners, plain and simple. It won't do it. And Yamaha went to a 51 tooth rear sprocket. And the reason they had to do that, which is usually unheard of for an OEM bike to come out with a 51 tooth in the rear, is they're trying to get some more of that bottom end back because of all of the things that they've done on the engine, the muffler, etc. And so the bottom line is this bike, in my opinion, is just like most of the other 450s. It doesn't have the characteristics that made it great, in my opinion. And so I would have much rather seen Yamaha came out with a third map that was from the factory for the lazy people, that was a more tamed down, retarded ignition timing, easier map off the bottom, and just a real slow map, right? Because Most people will change the map on the button, but very few people will actually go in and make their own maps and all that. So I'm disappointed in Yamaha. I'm disappointed in the way that these new bikes get tested. And you have a couple of folks, a couple of outlets, and again, nothing against them, but when they're dictating what a manufacturer does, I think that's poor R&D on the manufacturer's behalf, making the bikes lethargic. So what's the difference now with the Yamaha? It comes with KYBs. It's still a good bike. It lost its identity in my opinion, and I'm not a fan of it at all. In fact, I will not buy one. I have a 25 that has, I don't know, 16 hours on it. So I'll probably ride that thing, and then when I would normally sell them at 60 hours, I will probably just throw a top end in it and run it another 60 hours, because some of the things that they've done in order to get those back on the 26, you need to spend a lot of money. So you're going to need to throw a different muffler on the back. And even then, that's not going to bring all the power back. Having a heavier flywheel is not a good thing, in my opinion, from what I like in a bike. It's just not. So for me, it will be prohibitively expensive to buy a new bike and turn it back the way I wanted. So I will stick with the 23 to 25 model years for the engine alone. Chassis wise, I don't really think there's that much difference from the 26. All the 23 to 25 needed was a set of 23 and a half offset triple trees, and that made that bike handle very well, added stability, got rid of most of the head shake, and I don't really think the frame updates were that noticeable on the track for 99% of the average riders out there. So, anyways, I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated, and yeah, I wish Yamaha would consider the broader picture. Back in the day, manufacturers each seemed to have their own unique identity, and they stayed true to that. They don't do that now. They follow, the magazines all said, "Oh, we want a slower Yamaha. It's too fast." Now Yamaha slows it down, and what is the magazine outlet saying? Well, we want more power now, right? So the other thing I'm not a fan of that they did was they went to the hydro clutch, and I've used hydro clutches before on KTM's. I like the cable clutch on the Yamaha. Why not just leave the optionality for the rider to choose a cable or a hydro? You've just limited, again, more flexibility, more market potential. Because guys who, like myself, who like the cable clutch, that was going to be an attractive feature. Not that I wouldn't buy the bike because it didn't have it, but it was just a more attractive feature. So all in all, Yamaha, I think what you've done is you've taken a great motorcycle and you've tailored it down to exactly what the other manufacturers are doing. You've taken out some of the flexibility and the inherent characteristics that made it so good, and now it's meh. If you look at the 26 Vital MX 450 shootout, in the comments, they comment back on someone asked, how would the 25 YZ450 stack up? And they said it would have won the shootout. So they know, but when they ask for slower bikes and we want it more tamed down, you're making all the bikes so similar that, again, they don't have an identity, and I think they lose some of those traits that some of us like. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure I'll get some folks that don't agree, and that's fine. That's the beauty of it. We all have different opinions, and this is just mine. So, whatever you choose, safe riding.